Chapter 1. The Introduction of the Melody. It was a typical winter night in the big city, with relentless rain turning the streets into a sea of distorted reflections. The fog hung in the air, almost tangible, cloaking every corner in a shroud of mystery. At the heart of this darkness, the Noir Club gleamed like a beacon of decadence and jazz. Jack Sullivan was in his office, a small room cluttered with papers, empty bourbon bottles, and faded memories. He was watching the city through the rain-streaked window when the phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. "Detective Sullivan?" The voice on the other end was deep and urgent. "This is Sergeant O'Hara. We need you at the Noir Club, now." Without wasting time, Jack donned his worn trench coat and grabbed his fedora, stepping out to face the storm. The Noir Club was known for its vibrant jazz nights and its dangerous shadows. Something serious must have happened to call him at this hour. Upon arrival, Jack was met by the organized chaos of a crime scene. Police officers and paramedics moved like pieces of an incomplete puzzle. He spotted Sergeant O'Hara near the stage, the expression on the veteran's face confirming the gravity of the situation. "What the hell happened here, O'Hara?" Jack asked, his cold, calculating gaze sweeping the room. "Leo Belmont, the pianist. He's dead," O'Hara replied, pointing to Leo Belmont's body slumped over the piano. "It looks like murder." Jack approached the piano, where the scene was almost poetic in its tragedy. The famous Leo Belmont was dead, a look of surprise frozen on his face, his fingers still poised on the last notes of an unfinished melody. On the floor, scattered like clues to a puzzle, were sheets of a composition Leo had never finished. Jack picked up one of the sheets, the blue eyes of Leo Belmont now glazed over in a silent eternity. "This music, have you heard it before?" Jack asked. No one in particular, but the answer came from Violet Harper, the club's enigmatic singer, who stood near the bar, her eyes shining with held-back tears. "It's a new composition of his," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "He called it the melody of the perfect crime." Jack raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "Perfect crime, huh? Looks like someone took it too seriously." O'Hara stepped closer, a hand on Jack's shoulder. "I need you to find out what happened here, Jack. Belmont had many enemies, but also many friends. The city is watching this case." Jack nodded, determination coursing through his veins. He turned to Violet. "Where were you when this happened?" Violet hesitated, her gaze lost in recent memories. "I was backstage, getting ready for the next number. I heard a strange noise, but I didn't think that." "Violet, any detail can help. Did you hear anything else? See anyone suspicious?" Jack pressed, his voice soft but relentless. "I saw Marcus Blackwood leaving his office. He looked nervous," she finally replied, her eyes meeting Jack's with a mix of fear and determination. "He was with Leo just before all this." Jack nodded slowly, the puzzle pieces beginning to align. "I need to talk to Marcus." With one last look at Leo Belmont's body, Jack turned and walked towards Marcus Blackwood's office, the club owner. Each step echoed with the promise of more mysteries to come, and Belmont's unfinished melody played in his mind, a dark soundtrack for what lay ahead. The office door was ajar, and Jack entered without knocking. Marcus was sitting at his desk, a look of worry etched on his face. Seeing Jack, he straightened up, trying to maintain his composure. "Detective Sullivan," Marcus began, his voice controlled. "Can I help you with something?" "You can start by explaining why you were so nervous when Violet saw you," Jack replied, getting straight to the point, "and what you were doing with Leo Belmont just before he died." Marcus hesitated, his eyes scanning Jack's face as if searching for a weak spot. "I was discussing business with Leo, nothing more. When he left, I got worried because he seemed upset. I went to check on him, but it was too late." "Business, huh? What kind of business?" Jack pressed, sensing that Marcus was hiding something. "Club matters. It has nothing to do with what happened," Marcus insisted, but Jack wasn't convinced. "What do you know about the melody of the perfect crime?" Jack asked, changing tactics. Marcus paled slightly. It was a personal project of Leo's. He said it would be his masterpiece. But I didn't know that someone would do something like this. Jack narrowed his eyes, assessing every nuance of Marcus' expression. "I'll find out the truth, Marcus, and I hope you're on the right side when that happens." With that, Jack left the office, leaving Marcus in his own shadows. He knew the night was just beginning, and Leo Belmonte's unfinished melody continued to echo in his mind, an enigma promising to reveal much more than just the identity of a killer. Chapter 2. Echoes of a Dark Past. The rising sun barely illuminated the city, still shrouded in the twilight of dawn, as Jack Sullivan found himself back in his office. Leo Belmont's unfinished melody continued to echo in his mind, and each note seemed to carry a dark weight, as if whispering the secrets of the past. He knew that to understand the present, he would need to unravel what had been left behind. Jack began investigating Leo Belmont's life, delving into the club's records, old news stories, and speaking with people who knew him. Leo was a musical genius, but also a man with many enemies. Rivalries in the jazz world, old romantic grudges, and shady business deals. It was a past full of shadows, and Jack knew that each shadow could hide a clue. He decided to visit one of the most important places to Leo, the old studio where he used to compose. Upon entering, he was greeted by the smell of old wood and dusty sheet music. In the corner of the studio, an old gramophone softly played one of Leo's compositions. It was as if the pianist's spirit was still present, guiding Jack. As Jack examined the studio, the door creaked open. Violet Harper entered, her eyes observing the detective with curiosity. "I didn't expect to find you here, Jack," she said, her voice gentle. "I was looking for something to help me understand Leo," Jack replied, not taking his eyes off the sheet music scattered on the table. "Did you know he kept secrets here?" Violet walked over to the piano and gently stroked the keys. Leo had many secrets. He used music to hide his truths. Every note, every pause, everything had a meaning. "You seem to know quite a lot about him," Jack commented, finally looking at her. "What was the relationship between the two of you?" She sighed, her gaze lost in memories. "We were more than colleagues. We had a connection, both in music and in life. But he always kept something to himself. Sometimes I thought I didn't even know the real Leo." Jack nodded, sensing the pain in her words. "You mentioned seeing Marcus Blackwood the night of the murder. Are you sure he was nervous?" Violet hesitated before answering. "Yes, I saw him. Marcus is a complicated man, but I don't know if he would be capable of something so extreme." "Complicated how?" Jack asked, intrigued. "He was always controlling, especially with Leo. There was tension between them because of the music and other things," Violet said, her eyes shining with an unspoken truth. Before Jack could press further, the studio phone rang. He answered quickly, his expression changing upon hearing the voice on the other end. "It's the tuner. He found something you need to see." The piano tuner was an old friend of Jack's, a man with an exceptional ear for music and an incredible memory. If he said there was something important, Jack knew he couldn't ignore it. He and Violet left the studio to meet the tuner. They arrived at a small apartment filled with musical instruments and repair tools. The tuner, a thin man with gray hair and sharp eyes, greeted them with a nod. "Jack, Violet, thanks for coming so quickly." "What did you find?" Jack asked, getting straight to the point. "I was tuning Leo's piano when I discovered something unusual. One of the keys was slightly loose, so I opened the piano to check. I found this," the tuner said, handing Jack a yellowed envelope. Jack opened the envelope carefully, revealing several letters and an old photograph. The letters were from a woman named Claire, an old lover of Leo's, mentioning secret meetings and broken promises. The photograph showed Leo, Claire, and Marcus together, smiling for the camera in a moment of happiness that now seemed bitter. "Claire, she disappeared years ago," Violet said, recognizing the woman in the photo. "Leo never spoke of her again after she vanished." Jack examined the letters, each word revealing more about the love triangle and the tensions that shaped Leo's past. "It seems we have more questions than answers now. O'Hara needs to see this," Jack said, storing the letters. As Jack and Violet left the tuner's apartment, the city began to wake up. The sun was finally rising, but for Jack, the darkness of the case only deepened. Leo Belmont's melody was not just a piece of music, it was a labyrinth of secrets and lies, and he was determined to follow every note until he found the truth. Through the shadows of the past and the notes of an unfinished composition, Jack knew the path would be dangerous, but it was a path he was ready to tread, no matter the cost. Chapter 3. Notes of Danger. The city seemed darker that night. The sky was overcast and the rain fell incessantly, like a silent lament. Jack Sullivan walked through the wet streets, his hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, his hat pulled low to shield himself from the raindrops. He felt that each step took him deeper into a labyrinth of secrets and betrayals. Leo Belmont's unfinished melody continued to haunt him, each note echoing in his mind like a sinister whisper. Arriving at the Noir Club, Jack found the place darker than ever. The lights were dim, and the usual buzz of the crowd had been replaced by a tense silence. He made his way to the stage, where Violet Harper was seated, her fingers gliding softly over the piano keys, playing a melancholy tune. "You never sleep, do you?" Jack remarked, approaching her. Violet looked up, a sad smile on her lips. "Music is the only place I find peace, Jack. Especially now." Jack sat beside her on the piano bench. "I've discovered some things about Leo. He was more entangled in problems than I imagined." "Do you think those letters from Claire have something to do with the murder?" Violet asked, her voice full of concern. "I have no doubt. But there's something more. Something Leo was trying to say through the music," Jack replied, his eyes narrowing as he thought about the scattered notes. "That unfinished melody. It's a clue. I just need to figure out how to interpret it." Suddenly, a metallic, dry sound echoed through the club, making them both turn. A shadow moved quickly at the back of the hall. Jack stood up, his senses alert. "Stay here," he said to Violet, walking towards the sound. As he advanced, a figure emerged from the shadows, armed with a metal pipe. The attacker moved swiftly, swinging the pipe towards Jack. He dodged just in time, the pipe barely missing his head. In a quick motion, Jack grabbed the attacker's arm, twisting it and making the pipe clatter to the ground. "Who sent you?" Jack growled, pressing the man against the wall. The man, a common thug, only smiled sinisterly. "You're meddling where you shouldn't, Sullivan. This is a warning." Before Jack could respond, the thug broke free with a sharp move and ran for the exit, disappearing into the rainy night. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline surge through his veins. He knew he was getting closer to the truth, and someone didn't like it. Violet ran to him, her eyes wide with fear. "Jack, are you all right?" "I'm fine, but this confirms my suspicions. Someone doesn't want me to find out what happened to Leo," Jack said, looking at the door through which the thug had fled. "I need to be more vigilant, and so do you, Violet." She nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "I'll help in any way I can, Jack. Leo was more than a friend to me. He deserves justice. We'll need all the information we can get about Marcus Blackwood and Claire. If Leo was investigating something, it might be related to them," Jack said, grabbing his coat again. "I'm going to O'Hara's office. He needs to know what happened here." Leaving the club, Jack felt the weight of the case pressing heavier on his shoulders. The city, with its dim lights and deep shadows, seemed to conspire against him. But Jack wasn't one to be intimidated. He headed to the police department, where Sergeant O'Hara awaited him with a grave expression. "I received a call from Marcus Blackwood," O'Hara said, getting straight to the point. "He's nervous, said someone is trying to frame him." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. He knows more than he's saying. I had a little visit at the club. Someone tried to warn me off the case." O'Hara scoffed. "That only proves you're on the right track. But we need evidence, Jack. Something concrete to link Marcus or whoever to Leo's murder." Jack agreed, his eyes shining with determination. "I'll find that evidence. Leo left a trail, and I'll follow it to the end." As Jack left O'Hara's office, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets of the city that never slept. He knew the path ahead would be dangerous, full of twists and traps. But Leo Belmont's unfinished melody was an enigma he was determined to solve. And no matter how many dangers arose, Jack Sullivan was ready to face them all, until the truth finally came to light. Chapter 4. The Key to the Melody. The first lights of morning struggled to pierce the thick fog covering the city. Jack Sullivan, with eyes marked by lack of sleep, sat at his desk, spreading Leo Belmont's sheet music in front of him. Each page, each note, seemed to hold a secret that refused to be revealed. He knew he needed help to decipher the complexity of the melody. Jack picked up the phone and called his old friend, Sam Jenkins, a former jazz musician who now worked as a piano tuner. Sam had a keen ear and a knack for unraveling musical mysteries. "Sam, I need your help," Jack said, getting straight to the point. "There's something in Leo's sheet music that I can't decipher." "Bring it to my studio, Jack," Sam replied, in a voice roughened by years in smoky bars. "If there's something hidden in the music, we'll find it." Minutes later, Jack arrived at Sam's small studio, a cozy place cluttered with musical instruments and repair tools. Sam, a short, stocky man with a gray beard and bright eyes, greeted him with a warm hug. "Show me what you've got," Sam said, taking one of the sheets with calloused fingers. Jack spread the sheets on the table, explaining everything he knew about the unfinished composition and Leo's murder. Sam listened attentively, his eyes fixed on the notes, as if trying to hear the music in his mind. "There's a pattern here," Sam murmured after a few minutes of silence. "Look, Leo used a technique called musical cryptography. Each note represents a letter. It's a code." Jack leaned in, intrigued. "Can you decipher it?" "It will take some time, but yes, we'll find out what Leo was trying to tell us," Sam replied, already starting to work on the deciphering. While Sam worked, Jack received a call from Violet. Her voice was tense. "Jack, I think I'm being followed." "Where are you?" Jack asked, his tone immediately shifting to concern. "I'm at Leo's apartment, looking for more clues. But I have a feeling someone's watching me," she replied, her voice trembling. "Get out of there now, Violet. I'll meet you somewhere safe," Jack instructed, already heading for the door. Leaving Sam with the sheet music, Jack hurried through the streets to Leo's apartment. When he arrived, he found Violet waiting on the sidewalk, her eyes wide with fear. "Come on. Quick," he said, leading her to his car. As he drove to a safer place, Jack kept checking the rearview mirror for signs of a tail. "Did you find anything in the apartment?" "Yes, some old documents and photos, but nothing that seems immediately relevant," Violet replied, taking a deep breath to calm herself. "Jack, who's following us?" "Someone who doesn't want us to find the truth," Jack responded, gripping the steering wheel. "But we won't let them intimidate us." They arrived at a small motel outside the city, a discreet place where they could hide for a while. Jack rented a room and they settled in, trying to formulate a plan. Meanwhile, Sam called, his voice excited. "Jack, I've deciphered part of the code. Leo was investigating something big, something called Project Harmony." "Project Harmony? What is it?" Jack asked, intrigued. I don't know yet, but it sounds important. I'll keep decoding the rest, Sam replied. But you need to be careful, Jack. This is bigger than we thought. Jack hung up, turning to Violet. Leo was involved in something very dangerous, something called Project Harmony. We need to find out what it is. Violet nodded, determination returning to her eyes. We'll do whatever it takes, Jack. That night, as the rain continued to fall outside, Jack and Violet began to sift through the documents and photos found in Leo's apartment. Among them was a photo that caught Jack's attention. It was an image of Leo with a group of people in front of an old building with a sign that read, Belmont Music Institute. Do you recognize anyone in this photo? Jack asked Violet. She examined the image and pointed to a tall, thin man next to Leo. That's Richard Hawthorne, an old friend of Leo's and a talented composer. They founded the Institute together, but I heard Richard disappeared a few years ago. Jack frowned, sensing they were close to something. We need to find Richard. He might have the answers we're looking for. As the night progressed, Jack and Violet continued to piece together the puzzle, aware that each revelation brought them closer to danger. Leo Belmont's melody was not just an unfinished piece. It was a cry for help, a warning, and a key to unraveling a mystery that could change everything. And Jack Sullivan was determined to follow this melody to the end, no matter how dark the journey might be. Chapter 5. The Masquerade Ball. The city, always cloaked in shadows, was now preparing for a night of luxury and mystery. At the Noir Club, the main hall was being transformed into an opulent setting, filled with crystal chandeliers and golden decorations. It was the night of the Grand Masquerade Ball, an event promising to gather the city's most influential figures under a veil of anonymity. Jack Sullivan knew it was the perfect opportunity to extract hidden truths. Jack, disguised in an elegant black tuxedo and a golden mask that concealed his features, strolled through the hall with a champagne glass in hand. The place was packed with masked guests, each harboring their own secrets and intentions. He kept his eyes sharp, looking for Marcus Blackwood and anyone else who might provide clues about Project Harmony. Violet Harper, stunning in a red dress and a mask that accentuated her enigmatic eyes, was on the stage, preparing for another performance. She glanced at Jack and gave a barely perceptible nod, indicating she was ready for anything. In the corner of the hall, Jack spotted Marcus Blackwood conversing with a group of men. He approached silently, trying to catch snippets of the conversation. "We can't let this reach the wrong ears," Marcus was saying in a tense tone. "Project Harmony must remain secret." Jack moved closer, maintaining a casual posture. "Project Harmony, huh? Sounds important." Marcus turned quickly, his expression under the mask becoming cautious. "Who are you?" "Someone interested in the truth," Jack replied, his voice low and firm. "I think we have matters to discuss, Blackwood." Before Marcus could respond, the music started, and Violet took the stage, capturing everyone's attention. Her voice was hypnotic, filling the hall with a melody that seemed to penetrate the souls of the listeners. But Jack didn't get distracted. He grabbed Marcus by the arm and pulled him to a more secluded corner. "We don't have time for games, Blackwood. What is Project Harmony?" Jack demanded, tightening his grip on Marcus's arm. Marcus tried to pull away, but Jack was stronger. It's a musical initiative, something Leo and I were working on. Something that could change the world of music," he admitted, sweating under the pressure. "That doesn't explain why someone would kill for it," Jack insisted, not letting go of Marcus. "Leo discovered something," Marcus murmured, his voice trembling. "Something that put all of us in danger. He found a connection between Project Harmony and some illicit activities. I don't know the details, but he was scared." Jack stared at Marcus, trying to discern the truth. "And Claire? What does she have to do with this?" "Claire, she was helping Leo. She knew the risks but was determined to expose the truth. When she disappeared, Leo was devastated. He continued the investigation alone, Marcus confessed, his voice almost a whisper. "Then who's behind this? Who killed Leo?" Jack asked, feeling his frustration rise. "I don't know," Marcus admitted, "but I know that everyone involved with Project Harmony is in danger. You need to get out while you can, Sullivan." Before Jack could respond, a loud crash echoed through the hall, followed by screams. Violet had been attacked on stage. Her figure collapsed under the bright lights. Jack released Marcus and rushed towards her, his heart racing. "Violet!" he shouted, kneeling beside her. She was conscious but hurt, a pained expression on her face. "Someone doesn't want us to sing this melody, Jack," she said with a weak smile. "But we can't stop now." Jack helped Violet to her feet, looking around for the attacker. The hall was in chaos, the guests in panic. He knew danger was closing in, but also that he was closer to the truth than ever. With Violet by his side, he headed for the exit, determined to continue the investigation. Project Harmony was a key, and he was about to unlock a world of dark secrets and betrayals. As they left the club, Leo Belmont's unfinished melody still echoed in his mind, a soundtrack promising more revelations and dangers ahead. And Jack Sullivan was ready to face each one with the determination of a man who wouldn't stop until the truth was unveiled. Chapter 6: Fatal Harmony. The rain fell heavily the next morning, creating a steady, hypnotic rhythm against the windows of the small motel where Jack and Violet had taken refuge. The marks of the previous night's attack were still visible on Violet, but her spirit remained unbroken. Jack knew time was running out. The enemy was closing in, and Project Harmony needed to be unraveled before more lives were lost. Jack sat at the table, analyzing the documents and photos that Violet had found in Leo's apartment. Each clue seemed to lead to more questions than answers. Violet, sitting on the bed with an ice pack on her head, watched him silently. "Jack, what do you hope to find in those papers?" she finally asked, her voice soft, but filled with curiosity. "A pattern, a connection we haven't noticed yet," Jack replied without taking his eyes off the documents. "Leo was searching for something, and I believe these papers are the key to understanding what he discovered." Suddenly the phone rang, breaking the tension of the moment. Jack answered quickly. It was Sam. "Jack, I've found more about Project Harmony," Sam said, his voice tense. "It's not just about music. It's a scheme to launder money using musical events and donations to the Institute. Leo discovered the connection between Marcus and a crime syndicate." "That makes sense," Jack responded, his mind working rapidly. "That would explain why Leo was so scared and why Claire disappeared. They were threatening to expose the scheme." "But there's more," Sam continued. "Leo left a coded message in the unfinished melody. A final clue about who's behind this." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "Were you able to decipher it?" "Partly," Sam said, hesitating. "But we need a safer place to discuss this. They might be listening." Jack agreed, looking at Violet. "Let's meet at Leo's old studio. It's a place where he felt safe." Hanging up the phone, Jack explained the situation to Violet, and together they prepared to leave. The city seemed darker than ever as they drove through the rain-soaked streets to the studio. When they arrived, they were greeted by the familiar smell of old wood and dusty sheet music. Sam was already there, his eyes tired but determined. He laid several sheets of paper onto the table, showing Jack and Violet the complexity of the coded message. Leo used advanced musical cryptography. Each note, each pause, has a specific meaning. Jack analyzed the sheet music, his mind working frantically. "So, what does the message say?" "It reveals a name, Victor Greco," Sam said, pointing to the final sequence of the melody. "He's the leader of the crime syndicate behind Project Harmony." Violet gasped, recognizing the name. "Greco? He's dangerous, Jack. If Leo was about to expose him, there's no doubt he would be eliminated." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of the revelation. We need concrete proof to take this to the authorities, something that links Greco directly to the scheme. Sam agreed. Leo mentioned in one of his letters to Claire that he was keeping the proof in a safe place, a place only he knew. Before they could discuss further, the sound of footsteps echoed through the studio. Jack raised his hand, signaling the others to stay quiet. He approached the door, his heart pounding. Suddenly, the door was kicked open and armed men stormed into the studio. "Stay where you are!" one of the men shouted, pointing a gun at Jack. Jack raised his hand slowly, his eyes fixed on the leader of the group. "Victor Greco, I presume?" The man smiled coldly. "Very perceptive, Sullivan. Now, where are the documents?" Jack knew he couldn't hand over the proof. He needed a distraction. "You think we'll give it up that easily? You're underestimating our determination." Greco stepped closer, his eyes icy. "You don't have a choice, detective. If you don't cooperate, you'll all pay the price." Jack looked at Sam and Violet, trying to think of a way out. Suddenly, Violet stepped forward, her expression defiant. "Greco, you can threaten us, but you can't erase the truth. Leo Belmont trusted us, and we will honor his memory." Greco laughed, a chilling sound. "Foolish bravery? Let's see how long it lasts." At that moment, Jack seized the opportunity. With a swift movement, he knocked over the table, creating a barrier between them and the armed men. "Run!" he shouted to Sam and Violet, who immediately moved towards the back exit. Gunshots echoed through the studio, but Jack, Sam, and Violet managed to escape through the back door, running through the dark, rainy streets. They knew they were being pursued, but they also knew they had something Greco desperately wanted. Jack glanced back, seeing the shadows of Greco's men closing in. "We need to find a safe place to analyze these documents, something we can use against him." Violet nodded, adrenaline still coursing through her body. "I know a place. Follow me." As they ran through the night, Leo Belmont's melody still echoed in their minds, a constant reminder of danger and sacrifice. Jack knew they were getting close to the end, but he also knew the journey was far from over, and he was ready to face every challenge, every danger, until the truth was finally revealed. Chapter 7. Symphony of Betrayals. The night enveloped the city like a cold, dark blanket. Jack, Violet, and Sam ran through the dark streets, their footsteps echoing on the wet sidewalks. They arrived at a small abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a hideout Violet knew well. Inside, the atmosphere was dense and silent, the only sound being their heavy breathing. Jack closed the door behind him, locking it firmly. "We're safe for now. We need to analyze these documents before Greco finds us." Violet lit an oil lamp, casting a flickering light over the space. "We're far from prying eyes here. We can work without interruptions." Sam spread the sheet music and documents on a makeshift table. "Let's uncover what Leo was hiding. This might be our only chance to take Greco down." Jack and Violet leaned in, their eyes focused as Sam examined each page. Among the documents, they found financial records, coded letters, and compromising photos. Each piece of the puzzle began to fit together, revealing the true extent of Greco's criminal scheme. "Leo really did an impressive job," Jack commented admiringly. "He managed to document all of Greco's illegal transactions and connections." Suddenly, a noise from outside interrupted their concentration. Jack quickly extinguished the lamp and signaled for silence. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. Jack moved to the window, peeking through a crack. He saw a lone figure, a tall, thin man, approaching the warehouse. His heart raced as he recognized the familiar face. It was Richard Hawthorne, Leo's old partner. "It's Richard," Jack whispered. "What's he doing here?" Violet frowned, confused. "Richard disappeared years ago. How did he know we were here?" Before they could discuss further, the warehouse door opened slowly. Richard entered, his cautious eyes scanning the space. "Jack? Violet?" Sam, I know you're here. We need to talk. Jack stepped out of the shadows, ready for anything. Richard, how did you find us? Richard raised his hands in a gesture of peace. I'm on your side. I worked with Leo on Project Harmony. He sent me a message before he died, asking me to protect the documents. I knew you'd come here. Jack relaxed a bit, but remained cautious. So you're with us? Why didn't you show up before? Richard sighed, the weight of years in hiding evident in his eyes. I had to disappear to ensure my safety. Greco doesn't tolerate traitors. But now, with Leo dead, it's time to end this. Violet stepped forward, looking intently at Richard. Leo trusted you. We need your help to take Greco down once and for all. Richard nodded, determined. We'll do it together, but we need to move quickly. Greco is rallying his forces. He won't stop until he gets these documents back. As they discussed the plan, Jack couldn't shake a feeling of distrust. Something in Richard's eyes bothered him, but he couldn't afford to reject the help. It was a dangerous game, and every move needed to be carefully calculated. Hours later, with the plan set, they decided to act. Violet and Richard would stay guard at the warehouse, protecting the documents, while Jack and Sam would meet O'Hara with the evidence. As they left the warehouse, the rain had ceased, leaving the city shrouded in an unsettling silence. Jack and Sam drove quickly through the deserted streets, knowing that every second counted. When they arrived at the police department, O'Hara greeted them anxiously. "What do you have for me, Jack?" he asked, his voice heavy with concern. Jack handed the documents to O'Hara. "Enough evidence to take Greco and his entire operation down, but we need to act fast. He knows we're closing in." O'Hara flipped through the papers, his eyes widening at the magnitude of what Leo had uncovered. "This is explosive, Jack. We'll need a large operation to capture him." "Then let's set up that operation," Jack responded, determined. "Greco must be stopped." As O'Hara organized the team, Jack received a message from Violet. "Greco found the warehouse. We're cornered. We need help." Jack's heart raced. "O'Hara, we have a problem. Greco found the hideout. We need to go now." O'Hara's team mobilized quickly, and within minutes they were on their way to the warehouse. Jack felt the tension mounting with each passing kilometer, knowing that Violet and Richard's lives were at stake. When they arrived, the warehouse was surrounded by armed men. Jack and O'Hara's team moved with precision, taking out the thugs one by one. Inside, they found Violet and Richard hiding, unharmed but visibly shaken. "We're fine," Violet said, relieved to see Jack. But Greco escaped. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. "We'll find him, and we'll finish this." With the evidence in hand and O'Hara's team by his side, Jack knew the battle was far from over. But with each piece of the puzzle finally coming together, he was more determined than ever to bring justice for Leo and all those who had suffered at Greco's hands. The night was still long, but the symphony of betrayals was reaching its climax, and Jack Sullivan was ready to face every note until the end. Chapter 8. Duet of Desperation. The storm had passed, but the tension in the city was palpable. The streets were silent, as if anticipating the inevitable confrontation. Jack Sullivan, now armed with the necessary evidence, knew that time was running out. Greco was wounded but still dangerous, like a cornered animal. Jack, Violet, Sam, and Richard gathered at Leo's old studio, a place that had become their refuge. The sheet music and documents were spread out on the table as they planned their next move. The clock on the wall seemed to mark each second with unbearable weight. "We have everything we need to take Greco down," Jack said, looking at his allies. "But we need to act quickly and precisely. He won't go down without a fight." Violet, her face still marked by the previous attack, nodded. "What do you suggest, Jack?" "Greco has a hideout in the city," Jack replied, his eyes shining with determination. "An abandoned warehouse at the port. That's where he keeps his dirty money and incriminating documents. We'll infiltrate and take everything." Richard looked at Jack, distrust still evident. "And how are we going to do that? Greco will be expecting us." Jack smiled a joyless smile. "We have an ace up our sleeve, an old acquaintance of Greco who owes him a few favors. We're going to pay this friend a visit and persuade him to help us." The trip to Tony Marconi's house, one of Greco's former associates, was tense. Marconi was a tough man, but Jack knew he had his own issues with Greco. When they arrived, Marconi greeted them with a cautious look. "Jack Sullivan," Marconi said, lighting a cigar. "What brings you here at this hour?" "We need your help, Tony," Jack replied bluntly. "We're taking down Greco, and you're going to help us get into his warehouse." Marconi let out a bitter laugh. "Are you insane? Greco would kill me just for talking to you." Jack stepped forward, his expression serious. "If you don't help us, Greco will kill you anyway. He knows you're a weak link. Join us, and you'll have a chance to redeem yourself and survive." Marconi hesitated, Jack's words clearly hitting home. "All right," he finally said, "but if this goes wrong, we're all dead." Back at the studio, the plan was meticulously laid out. Marconi would take them to the warehouse and create a distraction, while Jack, Violet, Sam, and Richard infiltrated to collect the evidence and dismantle Greco's empire. The night was silent as they arrived at the port. Shadows danced under the moonlight, creating an atmosphere of suspense. Marconi did his part, distracting the guards while the group slipped in through a side entrance. Inside the warehouse, the smell of dampness and rust was oppressive. Jack led the group, eyes alert for any movement. They found a locked room where they believed Greco kept his secrets. "Richard, help me with this," Jack whispered, trying to force the door open. With a combined effort, the door finally gave way. Inside, they found boxes full of documents and money. Sam quickly started photographing the evidence while Violet kept watch. "We have to be fast," Jack said, feeling the pressure mounting. Suddenly the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Jack turned, gun drawn, and saw Greco enter, flanked by his thugs. "I knew you wouldn't give up, Sullivan," Greco said with a cold smile. "This is the end of the line, Greco," Jack replied, his voice firm. "We have everything we need to take you down." Greco laughed, a cruel and humorless sound. "You're naive, detective. I never thought you'd fall into a trap so easily." Before Jack could react, one of Greco's thugs attacked Richard, slamming him against the wall. Violet tried to intervene but was quickly overpowered. Jack and Sam were surrounded, with no way out. Greco approached, his eyes gleaming with malice. "I'm going to end you, and no one will ever know the truth." At that moment, Marconi appeared at the door, pointing a gun at Greco. "Let them go," he ordered, his voice steady. "It's time to settle the score, Greco." Greco raised his hands, feigning surrender. "Very well, Marconi, you've won." But in the next instant, he moved quickly, drawing a hidden gun. The sound of gunfire echoed through the warehouse, and Marconi fell to the ground, wounded. Jack seized the distraction to disarm one of the thugs and engage in a hand-to-hand fight with Greco. The fight was fierce, each blow filled with anger and determination. Jack finally managed to overpower Greco, pinning him to the ground. "This is for Leo," he murmured, handcuffing Greco. Violet rushed to help Marconi, who was gravely injured. "You're going to be okay," she said, trying to stop the bleeding. Marconi smiled weakly. "At least I'll die knowing I did the right thing." With Greco captured and the evidence in hand, Jack knew the battle was won, but the war against corruption was just beginning. As the police sirens approached, he looked at Violet, Sam, and Richard, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. "We still have a lot to do," he said, determined. "But today, we made a big step." The night had been long and filled with dangers, but the truth had finally come to light, illuminating the darkness that had consumed the city for so long. And Jack Sullivan was ready to face every new challenge until justice was fully restored. Chapter 9. Climax of Revelations. The rising sun painted the city in golden hues, but the morning's beauty contrasted sharply with the palpable tension in the air. The abandoned warehouse at the port was surrounded by police, and the sound of sirens echoed like a somber warning. Jack Sullivan and his team were exhausted, but the work was far from over. Greco was handcuffed, sitting in the back of a patrol car, his gaze dark. Capturing Greco was just the beginning. Now, they needed to ensure that he and his criminal empire were completely dismantled. The evidence collected at the warehouse was crucial, and Jack was determined to protect it at all costs. "We need to get this evidence to the police department immediately," Jack said to O'Hara, who was standing beside him, surveying the scene. "We can't give Greco a chance to get away with this." O'Hara nodded, his expression serious. "I'll personally make sure everything gets delivered safely." "You did a great job, Jack." As O'Hara prepared to leave, Jack turned to Violet, Sam, and Richard. "We need to make sure everything is in order. We need an official statement from Marconi. That will help solidify the case against Greco." Violet nodded, concern evident in her eyes. "Marconi is injured. We need to take care of him first." Marconi, still lying on a stretcher, looked at Jack. "I'll survive, Detective. Do what you need to do." With Marconi being taken to the hospital under police protection, Jack, Violet, and Sam headed to the police department. Richard stayed behind to ensure no detail was overlooked at the crime scene. Jack felt they were closer to justice, but he knew there was more to uncover. At the police department, the documents were handed over and catalogued. Jack watched as O'Hara and his team analyzed the evidence, confirming Greco's links to various illegal activities. It was a devastating blow to the crime syndicate, but Jack knew Greco still had powerful allies. "We need to interrogate Greco," Jack said, determined. "He must have more information about others involved. We can't stop now." O'Hara agreed. "I'll prepare the interrogation room. This could be our chance to dismantle the entire operation." As they prepared for the interrogation, Jack sat next to Violet in a waiting room. She was visibly exhausted, but her determination was unshaken. "You were amazing, Violet," Jack said softly. "We wouldn't have come this far without you." Violet smiled, a tired but sincere smile. "Leo deserved justice, and now we're finally getting it." Minutes later, Jack and O'Hara were in the interrogation room, with Greco sitting across the table. His cold, calculating eyes watched Jack's every move. "You can make things easier for yourself, Greco," Jack began, his voice calm but firm. "Tell us who else is involved. Who are your accomplices?" Greco laughed, a dry, joyless sound. "You really think you can intimidate me, Sullivan? I know powerful people. This won't end well for you." Jack maintained his composure, his eyes locked on Greco's. "Your empire is collapsing. Every second you stay silent is another nail in your coffin. Help us, and maybe we can negotiate something better for you." Greco remained silent, his face a mask of arrogance. Jack knew breaking his resistance would be tough, but he couldn't give up. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, Violet received an unexpected call. She answered quickly, her expression changing to surprise and concern. "Jack, we need to talk. Now." Jack left the interrogation room, meeting Violet in the hallway. "What is it?" "I received a call from an unknown number. It was Claire," Violet said, her eyes wide. "She's alive, Jack, and she has information that could change everything." Jack felt a mix of relief and tension. "Where is she?" "She's hiding in a hotel on the outskirts of the city. She said she has additional evidence against Greco and others involved in Project Harmony," Violet explained quickly. Jack knew they had to act fast. "Let's go. If Claire really has more evidence, this could be the break we need." Back at the police department, Jack informed O'Hara about the new lead. "We'll need an escort. This could be a trap, but it's a chance we can't miss." O'Hara agreed, organizing a small team to accompany Jack and Violet. The drive to the hotel was tense, everyone aware of the risks. When they arrived, they found Claire hiding in a room, visibly shaken, but determined to help. "Claire," Jack said softly, approaching her. "You're safe now. We need the information you have." Claire handed over a folder full of documents. "Leo and I discovered more than just the money laundering scheme. Greco was involved in arms and human trafficking. We have proof, but this goes much deeper than we imagined." Jack flipped through the documents, feeling the weight of the revelation. "This is explosive. We need to get this to the police department immediately." As they prepared to leave, Jack's phone rang. It was O'Hara. "Jack, we have a problem. Someone inside the department is leaking information to Greco. We need to be extremely careful." Jack hung up, his expression grave. "We have a traitor among us. We need to be discreet and fast." With Claire by their side, Jack knew they were racing against time. Leo Belmont's melody, filled with secrets and revelations, was reaching its climax, and Jack was determined to play every note until the end, ensuring justice prevailed. As they left the hotel, the first light of dawn began to break on the horizon. The battle was far from over, but Jack Sullivan, Violet Harper, and their allies were ready to face every challenge until the truth finally came to light. Chapter 10. The Melody of the Perfect Crime. The streets were illuminated by the pale glow of dawn, a deceptive tranquility hanging in the air. Jack, Violet, and Claire hurried back to the police department, knowing that every minute counted. Claire's presence and the new evidence could finally bring down Victor Greco and his criminal empire. Upon entering the station, Jack noticed the tense atmosphere. O'Hara was waiting for them, looking worried. "Jack, we need to act quickly. I've received information that Greco has a contact within the police. We need to ensure these documents get to the right place." Jack nodded, his mind racing. "We'll keep the evidence secure and interrogate Greco again. This time, with the new information, he won't have anywhere to run." They headed to the evidence room, where Claire's documents were carefully stored. Jack, O'Hara, and Violet prepared for the second interrogation, while Claire remained under police protection. Entering the interrogation room, they found Greco sitting with a disdainful smile. Jack placed the folder of documents on the table, opening it so Greco could see the contents. "Recognize these documents, Greco?" Jack asked, his voice cold and controlled. "Evidence of arms trafficking, human trafficking, and money laundering. Your criminal network is falling apart." Greco glanced at the documents, his smile slowly fading. "You think this is enough to bring me down? I have powerful allies, Sullivan. People who can't be touched." Jack leaned over the table, his eyes locked on Greco's. "Maybe your allies are powerful, but we have the truth on our side. And with this evidence, we'll make sure each one of them is exposed." Before Greco could respond, the phone in the room rang. O'Hara answered, his expression hardening as he listened to the voice on the other end. Hanging up, he turned to Jack. "We have a problem. Someone's trying to access the evidence room. We need to go now." Jack and O'Hara sprinted down the corridors, with Violet close behind. When they reached the evidence room, they found an officer trying to access the documents. Jack recognized him immediately. It was Lieutenant Harris, a respected veteran now with a guilty look. "Harris, what are you doing?" Jack demanded, his voice filled with incredulity. Harris hesitated, sweat dripping from his forehead. I needed the evidence. Greco has my family. He threatened to kill them if I didn't cooperate." Jack approached slowly, his anger controlled. "You know what's at stake here, Harris. Turn yourself in, and we can help your family." Harris let his shoulders drop, defeated. "All right, I just wanted to protect them." O'Hara took Harris into custody while Jack and Violet ensured the evidence was intact. They returned to the interrogation room where Greco waited, his look cold and calculating. "Your man failed, Greco," Jack said, sitting down again. "Harris confessed everything. There's no escape." Greco smiled, a chilling smile. You might have won this battle, Sullivan, but the war is far from over. Jack stared directly into Greco's eyes. This war ends here and now. You will pay for all your crimes. With the new evidence and Harris's confession, Jack and O'Hara were able to organize a massive operation to dismantle the remainder of Greco's network. Arrests were made throughout the day, and each link in the criminal chain was taken down. Hours later, with Greco finally behind bars, Jack, Violet, and Claire gathered at a cafe near the station. The relief was palpable, but the sadness for the lost lives still weighed on them. "We did it," Violet said, a shy smile on her face. "Leo finally got justice." Jack nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. "Leo was a hero, as are all of you. This was just one chapter, but the fight against corruption continues." Claire looked at Jack, gratitude evident in her eyes. "Thank you, Jack. You saved my life and brought peace to many. Leo would be proud of you." Jack smiled, a tired but sincere smile. "It was a team effort, and as long as there's injustice, we'll keep fighting." The trio sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the future. Leo Belmont's melody, now complete, was a tribute to truth and justice. And Jack knew that, though the road was arduous, they were ready to face any challenge ahead. As they left the cafe, the city seemed a bit brighter, a bit more hopeful. Jack looked up at the sky, feeling Leo's presence beside him. The melody of the perfect crime had been played to its end, and justice had finally prevailed. And so, with renewed determination, Jack Sullivan, Violet Harper, and Claire Belmont moved forward, ready to write the next chapters of their lives, always fighting for truth and justice in every note, in every melody. And you think it ends here? In the next video, the continuation will be breathtaking.